Yes, doctor. Yes, we can hear you.
Great.
Okay, so hopefully we'll start at 5 p.m. sharp.
5 sharp? Okay, great. You want us to open the cam?
If you can, that would be great.
Yes, I can. How is Daniel?
Doctor, we're live on YouTube now.
It's okay. How
Hello, Dr. Tabal.
Hello, Muhammad. How are you doing?
It's great. How are you?
Good,
Dr.
good.
Tabal is our committee's director.
Thank you, Muhammad. Welcome, Dr. Hatem, Dr. Hokayem.
Hello. I'm not a doctor yet, Dr. Hokayem.
Okay.
Hi, Dr. Tabal.
مرحبا أهلا.
You are in the OSB, no?
لا أنا actually أنا بالفاكولتي of Arts and Sciences.
Okay, OSB used to be part of the Arts and Sciences at the
Yeah,
time.
مظبوط. That's very true. It was a department.
Before Dr. Najjar, the founding dean, took care of everything.
Yes, I remember Dean Najjar very well, actually. We had a very good relationship. And I joined the UB in 97. If I remember well, around 2000, they became separate.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
You joined
yeah.
as a student or as a professor at the time?
لا as an assistant professor of physics. انا عملت البي اس والام اس تبعي بالاي يو بي بال 80s. بعدين I went to Canada for several years and came back.
Interesting.
انت دكتور حكايم امتى كنت بالاي يو بي؟
As a part-timer, it means as a professor.
لا انت you were a student here, right?
I was not a student at AUB.
Okay.
No.
I was the student.
Okay.
You were in the business faculty, Danielle?
لا, in the arts and science, I was an economics student.
Economic.
Yes, دكتور سرحان بوقتها.
ايه الله يرحمه.
إيه أنت متوفى دكتور سرحان؟ ما كنت عارفة.
بلا توفى مش يعني I think if I remember well like 2 or 3 years ago. He was
إيه
still
ده؟
he was still a part-timer and then
أوف.
he passed. He was such a wonderful guy.
Amazing, amazing. I adore دكتور سرحان بعقد.
وهلا شو عم
He was
تعملي؟
the director.
chairman. He was chairman at one time بس recently كان في دكتور نعيمي ودكتور نسرين سلطي. They were chairs.
Hey, Dr. Simon, I know he was the chair.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
ودانيال عم تعملي PhD هلا؟
لا ما عم بعمل PhD. أنا mainly عندي double masters finance and economics. عملت ماسترز بوربيك، رجعت عملت ماسترز ب HEC Executive Masters Finance at HEC باريس. And then I started work بفرنسا، رجعت نقلت على لبنان in 2008 واشتغلت بلبنان بالبانكينج سيكتور ونقلت يعني from one bank رجعت على as an advisor to a private company. وبعدين I started my page on Instagram. It's called Dida's Business. When إذا بدك معتبر as a business influencer, I share on a daily basis كل شيء related to economics and financial news, everything that's happening in Lebanon. I'm available on different networks, and I have a presence on Twitter, a presence on YouTube channel. I have several guests, weekly guests. بحكي عنهم كمان عن الوضع. That's how actually I did my connection with everyone, with Muhammad, with Dr. Hokayem, with everyone.
I see. يعطيك العافية. لك هلا I'll follow you.
Yeah, great. Yay, a new follower.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so shall we start? All right.
Whenever you want.
Okay, Dr. Jihad, you're with us?
Yes, I'm with you.
Perfect. Okay, so success is not final, failure is not fatal, it's the courage to continue that counts. So I would like to welcome everyone to our financial discussion organized by LEAD Students Committee. LEAD is a committee formed from student representatives from all different scholarships at AUB. This event particularly has been organized by Noor Merey, Sarah Al-Bouiri, and myself. Mohamed Arifa, I'm doing my master's in finance. I actually graduated recently, and different offices from AUB. Before I introduce our esteemed panelists, I would like to shout out all our collaboration with AGFE Club, Business Student Society, Economic Student Society, and OSB student representatives. Now I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists, starting with Dr. Jihad El Hokayem, a leading economist and financial market strategist. We are honored to have you on board, Doctor.
Thank you, thank you, Muhammad. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Dr. Malik. Thank you, everybody. It is such a great pride to be among you. First of all, since I'm a part-timer at OSB at AUB, so for me, I'm with my family here. So, Danielle, I would like to welcome you. And
Thank
it's,
you.
We take pride in having you, and I congratulate you for all the efforts you're putting in order to spread knowledge in the world of finance and economics. And we really need people like you nowadays, especially that we found out lately that we have huge illiteracy in this area. That's why the vast majority of Lebanese lost their savings.
Very true, very true. Thank you so much, Dr. Hokayem. It's really an honor for me to be on this panel along your side. So thank you for giving me the occasion to be speaking as an AUB alumni. I am very happy to be able to speak to the students, to give you some guidelines, and to tell you more about what's happening around us.
Muhammad, the
Thank
floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniel. I actually wanted to introduce you, but Dr. Jihad did the honors. So we would love this panel to be a discussion, and we do not have to abide strictly by any questions. So feel free to discuss with each other whatever you like. However, let's start with the first question. What do you think are the main causes that led the Lebanese financial system to this struggle? How did it all start, and where would it all continue? Dr. Jihad, what do you think?
I guess I would give the honor to Danielle to answer this question because ladies first, and she's our guest. So we start with
Such
you.
a gentleman, such a gentleman. He already told me not to call him Dr. Jihad, so I'm going to call him Jihad. He said that off the record, so I'm going to respect whatever he said, so I'm going to call him Jihad. So thank you, Jihad. You're such a gentleman. And let me start then answering this first question. Unfortunately, today you said the financial system. It's not only the financial system that is struggling, it's the whole economy that is struggling. And the main problem with the financial system was the lack of proper risk management. On one side, it was partly because of greed. On the other side, it was also because of bad decisions on the monetary policy front. And this led to where we are today, a solvency, a liquidity, and a confidence crisis that we are all witnessing in the financial system. So just to go back to the basics. In general, how do any economy function? The financial system's role is to be the intermediation between depositors and investors. What does that mean? That means that any bank would use depositors' money to finance lending to investors in order to stimulate growth in an economy. What the bank did here in our country was completely the opposite, mainly. They didn't do that. They had another model that failed dramatically. Why do I say that? That actually the lending was totally geared toward who? Toward the Lebanese government, which we all know has a weak creditworthiness. So this lending was geared toward mainly to service debt and to finance the fiscal deficit. We all know they were like, if you're lending to someone and that someone is not going to pay you back. So basically the banks didn't do their proper study. Whenever you want to lend to a person, you need to do a credit risk assessment of that borrower, and they didn't do it properly. Why? Because of greed reasons, whatever the reason they had, they didn't do their job properly. That's from one side. On the other side, there was also another problem that you have. It's the PEG system that was adopted in our country that is short on USD. We are a country short on USD. Why? Because we have a chronic deficit, fiscal and trade deficit. So mainly the central bank started pushing the banks to put the US dollar deposits at BDL at high interest rate. And what did BDL do? BDL used these dollars deposit to maintain artificially the peg. Okay, so dollars started flowing out of the country. We started having a net outflows of US dollars from the country. And this basically made our deposits evaporate. And here I want to add one more very important point, is that I need to mention that the US dollar deposits didn't all just evaporate. Some never existed. You know why? Because some of them were the result of accumulated interest over time, or deposits, Lebanese deposits that were converted to LBP. So basically, not all deposits evaporated. Some just didn't exist. They existed only on books. So basically, the crisis started back in 2016 when the central bank started doing the financial engineering scheme. It was clear that they were short on dollar. They had a shortage in dollars. So he started doing this financial engineering scheme to replenish his reserves. After that, in 2019, it started becoming clear that the banking sector had a liquidity crisis. They started putting withdrawal limits to their clients. And then the revolution happened. The banks closed for 2 weeks. After that, there was a rush and panic rush to the banks, and that's when the crisis started. I hope it was a bit clear, Jan. Summary, just a quick summary.
It was very clear, a lovely explanation. Dr. Jihad, what do you
Yes.
think?
I think that now it's too late to talk about what happened, because The loss is here. The collapse already took place, unfortunately. But practically, we didn't used to have a decent economic model. So the economic model in Lebanon was not sustainable. So we used to have a rentier economy. It was not productive economy. We didn't used to foster growth on solid basis, and we were not creating a real added value. So, and Danielle as well talked about the problem of the peg. You cannot have a peg for several years unless you are a petrodollar economy. So we didn't used to have a currency market. So there was no market for the Lebanese pound. And normally having a peg with huge deficits in the balance of payment, so it's not something sustainable. So always we used to rely on external factors to help us. We cannot rely on expatriates forever. We cannot rely on external debt forever. We used to get debt, but we used to actually invest the international debt on consumption. So we were not investing, we were not getting an external debt or international debt in order to invest in Lebanon and in order to create a sustainable economy. So everything was temporary. Here, and not to talk about corruption and wastefulness in everything related to electricity and other ministries. So I don't want to focus on one ministry, but mainly the debt, and not to talk about the excess of interest. Okay, so we were in a kind of usury system. So if you take what was happening in Lebanon lately, it was a Ponzi scheme. Everybody knows about it, but nobody wanted to believe. Until today, you have people that they are in the denial phase, and they would prefer toxic positivity instead of facing the truth. So the economy in Lebanon, the economic model was not sustainable. They used to claim we are in a certain free market economic system, but how come that we are in a free market economic system and you don't have real competition? So we used to have plenty of monopolies, exclusive dealers for plenty of things. So it was kind of let's say a mess, the situation in Lebanon. We ended up by doing it. So, and they were subsidizing everything at the expense of a real economy. So I'm gonna give you an example. They were subsidizing real estate. They were subsidizing the Lebanese pound. Even last year, when we defaulted against when we didn't honor, let's say, our terms, and we defaulted on the euro bond, lots of people, or the vast majority of people, they welcomed this decision, although it was a catastrophe, because they actually gave the impression, it was a delusion, okay, that they're going to use these reserves, or what is left of these reserves, in order to subsidize gasoline, medicine, and as well food. Actually, the fact that we defaulted on euro bonds, the Lebanese pound was 2,000 against every dollar. Now it is 18,000 versus every dollar, because the fact that we defaulted, and it was a hard default, we got isolated from international markets. So now they're giving the impression to people that they are subsidizing. I wish they didn't subsidize anything from the beginning. So the real estate now, it's adjusting itself and coming to let's say to levels where it should have been years ago. And in case we would have lifted the subsidies when and we didn't default on euro bonds, the exchange rate by now would have been 3,000, not more. But the fact that they want to lift subsidies and we are at 18,000, this is the problem. So let's take it from there. In case we take the last 10 years, they didn't take any appropriate economic or financial decision in favor of the Lebanese economy. So they raised taxes in the middle of the recession in 2017. and we went from recession to depression. They went for financial engineering in order to postpone the problem. They were giving, let's say, imaginary interest rate. It was a usury, okay, in order to entrap people, whether in Lebanon or outside the country, because there was not enough money in the system, okay, to get their money outside, because the PEPs, the politically exposed people, they wanted to take their money they want to take it outside the country. In order to take the money outside the country, they didn't have enough money in the system. So they increased the interest rate to imaginary levels. So they attracted capital from abroad. So this way it was possible to them to take their money outside the country. This is what happened. So decent people who really gained their money out of their sweat and out of hard working, they ended up having their money inside the system, entrapped in the banking system. And the politically exposed people, they ran away with their money, although this money was not generated out of their sweat. It was generated out of their corruption and out of the imaginary interest rates and the rentier economy. So they didn't produce, or they didn't give any added value. So it was commission on projects and corruption, but they ended up by taking the real money generated by citizens and expatriates and even people outside Lebanon who trusted the Lebanese banking system.
If you allow me here, Jihad, here you're saying that we shouldn't have defaulted, but what was the alternative? Today we had payments to do. We had payments to do over the coming years. How you could have paid, and you couldn't have accessed any financing at that time. What was the ideal alternative? And Oman,
Okay.
I'm not seeing it here.
Actually, we had 4 choices. The best one was not to default, because actually the money that we spent over the last 2 years was by far more than the due payments. So we defaulted, we had to pay 1 billion and a half. We spent in the last 2 years more than 20 billion, okay, between subsidies and not subsidies. So we had
Not
the
having
chance in
tax
order
control,
not to
yeah.
default. Okay.
Yeah,
so
but
let's
how to
say
get the financing for the future payments that we had?
Yeah, but all we had to pay was not more than 10 billion. So if you take the euro bonds for the upcoming years, so they were not more than $10 billion. We spent more than $10 billion in 1 year. In 1 year, we spent more than $13 billion. So the default, it was not the appropriate decision. And first of all, we had 4 scenarios. I said the best thing is not to default and to have an economic plan. The second best thing was to default, but to have a plan. Okay, so it means I was supposed to be to have the IMF by my side, to have entered with real negotiation, real tangible negotiation with the creditors or with the bondholders, the euro bondholders. Third best decision would have been not to default and not to have an economic plan in order to gain time. That's it. Okay, in order to enter into a negotiation with the bondholders, with the euro bondholders. And the worst scenario was to default and not to have an economic plan. And this is what happened. So they opted, and I said that ahead of time before we defaulted. So ahead of time, before defaulting, I said that we should not default on the euro bonds. And long time before the discussion whether we should default or not default, I said that since they didn't implement the capital control, because I started calling for implementing the capital control in 2018, long time before the October 2019, because now they are trying to put everything on the October 2019, let's say, revolution.
Yeah, it's true.
In 2018, I called for implementing capital control. Since they failed to implement capital control and they didn't do that, so by summer 2019, I started calling for having the IMF by our side before doing anything, because I knew that the PEPs are taking their money outside the country. And if you ask, the PEPs didn't start taking their money outside the country after the revolution. They did that long time before. That's why they were actually attracting capital from abroad by offering them very high interest rates, spectacular interest rates. So they knew what's happening. It was a kind of inside trading. So they knew what's happening. So they lifted interest rate to imaginary levels, and people were bringing their money into the system. And at the same time, the PEPs were taking their money outside the system. This is what happened, unfortunately.
Well, yeah.
Unfortunately, Doctor. So we can summarize what you said. You know, the problems we're going through 20 years of corruption, and not doing anything from the monetary side and leaving things to go wrong. And even lately, with the decisions regarding the Eurobond and so on, they were not taken care responsibly. So we're literally now sitting in hell because of what 20 years of irresponsibility led. Doctor, you mentioned something regarding real estate.
Yeah.
You forecasted the crash of the real estate way ahead of what happened. What do you think is coming next? And people that use dollars to buy their real estate, what will happen?
Okay, if you want to take a practical case, let's say they misled people another time. So all they did in Lebanon, it was misleading people. So they told people throughout the years that real estate is the best investment. At the time, we were calling people to diversify their portfolio and not to put all their eggs in one basket. Unfortunately, even those who teach economics and finance, it seems they were entrapped as well. So they were preaching something that they don't do. Because I always see people who teach economics complaining on social media about their lost savings in the Lebanese banking system. The problem since 2013, I said that the central bank is nurturing the bubble by giving subsidies and subsidized loans for those who don't deserve. So the subsidized loans in 2013, they were 800 million. So it means more than $550,000 per apartment, subsidized loans for one person. And they were giving subsidized loans for developers. So they were nurturing prices upward and nurturing the bubble. And this was another form of rentier economy. So the rentier economy is not just by putting money at the bank and not doing anything and getting high interest. It's by buying a piece of real estate, not doing anything, waiting until the price is going to increase, then you sell it. Okay, because you know that there was a bubble nurtured by the central bank and by everything. So what happened in 2016, I said that by 2020, we're going to collapse, not just as real estate, but as a whole economy. And I linked that to the price of oil, because there was a relation between oil prices and the economic situation in Lebanon. But there was a time lag of 20 months. So it means in case oil prices, they're going to collapse, after 20 months, we're going to feel the effect. So why we collapsed after October 2019, because I said the collapse is going to take place in 2020, because oil prices, they collapsed in 2014. But the average price in 2014 was above 80. It was around 93. But average price in 2015, 16, and 17, they range between 46 and 54, and they were very low. So the effect of 2015, 16, 17, the effect, we started feeling the 2015 and 2017, and the 2016, we started feeling its effect in 2017. So for the 15, we started feeling in 2017, and the 16 in 18, and the 17 in 19. So that's why I said starting October 2019, and I said that 2017, by the end of 2017, that starting October 2017, starting October 2019, will enter the third year of low oil prices effect on the Lebanese economy. And since you know that in economics, so for us in economics, in order to say that we have a recession, we need at least 2 quarters. So the third quarter, we start feeling the effect. Same thing for real estate. Starting the third year, we're going to see the huge impact, and we cannot bear 3 years of negative oil prices. So negative oil prices, it means less remittances, less non-resident deposits, less Lebanese abroad getting huge salaries or getting a huge project from, let's say, from the Gulf and from Africa, because mainly the money that we get or we used to get in Lebanon, they were from expats. The money was from expats in the Gulf and in Africa. In Africa, mainly Angola and Nigeria, and in the Gulf countries. And you have to add something that we used to have a currency called the CFA, which was pegged to the euro. So normally when oil prices used to be high, the euro used to be high, and countries in Africa, around 19 countries where you have plenty of Lebanese, they used to have a currency called CFA. Now they still have it, but they changed the name. So for Lebanese, even living in Europe, when the euro was high, it was attractive to them to buy in Lebanon real estate and land. So now for those who bought lately, let's say with their Lebanese dollars, they bought apartments, they made a mistake, a huge mistake. Because actually I called them to go for a stop loss. The stop loss was the following. At the beginning of the crisis, you were able to get 90% of your money and you lose 10%. Then it was still possible to you to lose 20% but get 80% of your money. Then before the default, even in February 2020, you would have, let's say, sacrificed the 25% and got 75% cash, or you could have transferred this money abroad. But some people who invested their money in real estate in Lebanon, okay, in case they invested their money in real estate outside Lebanon, okay, they would have been on the safe side in case they picked a decent country where prices are undervalued. Like Greece, some people, they bought decent apartments in Greece 1 year ago or 1.5 years ago. But imagine you bought with the money entrapped in the banking system real estate in Lebanon. So it means you are always in what we call the country risk. So you were Lebanon, you are still Lebanon. Imagine instead of opting for a 20% stop loss, you bought an apartment. I'm gonna give you an example. You bought an apartment for 500K. Okay? Check bancaire. The check bancaire was the equivalent of how much 1.5 years ago? It was the equivalent of $400,000. Okay? Let's say you decided instead of getting 500,000 cash, okay, and to limit your stop loss to 100K, you bought an apartment. Even if you're going to be able to sell this same apartment today for $1 million instead of the 500, and which is not very likely. It's not very easy to find someone to buy your same apartment that you bought for 500, which was the equivalent of $400,000 18 months ago. In case you're gonna find someone who's going to buy it for 1 million today, the $1 million today is the equivalent of 170K. Okay, the equivalent of 170K. So instead of getting 400, you got 170. So your 500 is now 170. So you lost it 3 times. Okay? So, and in case the situation is going to go from here to another level, so most probably we're going to somewhere more gloomy. So your real estate is going to have a less value, unfortunately. And I think that people who lost their jobs and lost their savings and they don't have any income, they might sell their real estate for food. And whenever I say real estate for food, it means you're gonna sell your real estate not just to eat, but in order to buy medicine. Because today you know that we don't have medicine, or we don't have all kind of medicine in the Lebanese market. And in case you want to purchase medicine from abroad, you need cash, you need dollars. Medicine outside is more expensive. In case you want to go to the hospital today, they're gonna ask for cash first, and then you're going to handle it with your insurance. So even if you have today $100,000 aside, I'm sure you're not going to take this money in order to buy an apartment, even if the price is going to be according to you attractive, because you're going to keep this money in order to make sure, in case you're going to go to the hospital, so you're going to have decent hospitalization and you can afford your hospitalization and you're gonna afford your medicine. So in case you don't have any savings, you might be forced to sell your apartment, to sell your land in order to have hospitalization, to buy medicine, to afford education for your kids. Some people are selling their real estate and their apartments to have the price of a ticket to leave the country and to have a small capital once they go to another country. And whenever we know that the trend in real estate is downward, nobody wants to invest. Okay, so, and you have to bear in mind, don't tell me that expatriates are going to find that prices in Lebanon are attractive. Who told you that those who are knowledgeable in the world of investment, they're going to pick Lebanon as a place where to invest? You have the whole world to invest. Even if you are fond of real estate, you can invest in REITs, you can invest in real estate all around the globe. And you have to bear in mind that expatriates in Lebanon, they have a grudge against Lebanon now, unfortunately. They should have the grudge against the PEPs, but not against the country. But unfortunately, they have a grudge against Lebanon because for them, all their sweat, all their saving, okay, was confiscated and they lost their savings because they invested this money in Lebanon as per them.
I just want to add here that no more housing loans will be provided, whether locally or internationally. This will affect, and it will be also all paid cash. So who has the means to pay cash $1 million these days? So the price will drastically decline, in my opinion, as well. He pretty much summarized it. The 3 sources of demand are no more present. The expats will not pay. They have their money stocks in the banks in Lebanon. The Lebanese resident cannot afford to buy any residential or real estate in the country. And you have, of course, the Gulf citizens who are no longer interested in investing in Lebanon at the moment with everything happening. They don't even find it attractive. So yes, definitely, I agree with Jihad.
Definitely. Thank you for highlighting this point. It's very important.
Yeah, real estate is a very dark picture. Yeah, I'm very, I don't know what the word is.
Not just real estate, Muhammad. Muhammad, for everything that we have a dark picture. Yes. And Danielle, to add on that, not just the demand factors are no longer here. Those who bought at the time, now they are at the supply side.
It's very true, exactly. Again, true. You have a lot of supply in it.
Yeah, they told you everything was sold. The normal citizens, they want to sell their apartments. Plenty of Lebanese. There is exodus. There is exodus in human capital in Lebanon.
You are in a survival mode. When you are in a survival mode, as Jihad said, you would be willing to sell anything to survive and to live. There's a huge brain drain that's happening at the moment, and this is one of the most dangerous factors that will impact us and will impact the recovery of our country, because these are the assets of our country and we don't want them to leave. And these people are leaving at whatever cost. Be careful about this. They are not leaving for a high salary. They're leaving for the minimum just to have a foot outside of the country, and this is very dangerous, and this really will not allow the recovery of the economy as we wish it will happen.
Exactly. As you said, the negotiation power of Lebanese is not the same as it used to be before. So they are in dire need of this money. So they are leaving for very, very small salaries sometimes. Okay. And this is going to limit their capacity to buy in case they're interested in the future. Okay. So some of them are going to survive and to send some dollars for their family here to continue surviving.
That's it.
Okay, so
that's how we pictured a very gloomy picture for the students now listening here. It's not maybe if they were already desperate, now they're even more desperate. So let's try maybe
Danielle, no, Danielle, I want to tell you something. Actually, youth used to be the weakest circle before the crisis. Now, after the crisis, they are the strongest circle. And I can prove it to you. First of all, 2-3 years ago, they used to take advantage of new graduates and of the youth, and they used to give them 600,000 and 800,000, okay, for fresh graduates. So they were abusing their capabilities. Now, after the crash, we've seen that youth are still employable outside the country. Okay, it's not the case for everybody. And youth, because of the knowledge economy, they did what we call virtual immigration, especially those who work in programming, let's say web design, digital media, social media, graphic design, consulting, everything that needs added value. So they were able to do virtual immigration, to stay in Lebanon, to cash in fresh dollars. So their salaries compared to normal people who are not employable easily outside the country, or those who were relying on the rentier economy, so they don't know anything now because actually they're not used to working anymore. Whereas the youth were very agile, they were still employable outside the country and inside the country, and not to undermine as well the frontliners from medicine to nursing to lab technicians and research. So the youth are still employable. Everybody wants them. Whereas those who were used to the rentier economy, or not everybody, but big chunk of those who work in the public sector, they were not very productive, so they're not employable outside the country and they're stuck here. So now the Lebanese youth are the strongest in this, and they are lobbying outside Lebanon. They are lobbying to free Lebanon from this political class and this regime who is behind all this mess.
I agree that the youth have a big, huge role to play. Not only that they're employable, of course they are employable, and I believe that the Corona crisis, it facilitated working from abroad, from home, because now you can work on Zoom, you can have conferences online, you can deliver out of Lebanon. But again, if the situation gets worse, you know that even the internet will not be able to function properly. If we have an electricity shortage, a fuel shortage, it will impact even the internet. So even a lot of companies will have to relocate outside of Lebanon, and even the youth that are employable from everywhere, even from Lebanon, located in Lebanon, will not be able to actually work properly. But I want to move to also to just talk about the youth in particular and how they can impact change today, because they have a big role to play in changing our society. I will not just give them advice, like I want to be a bit more pragmatic. today, what are the tools or the resources that the youth have in hand? First, they have voting rights. So they have vote and their vote counts a lot. Second, they have access to information and education. They are educated and they have access to information. And third, there is technology. It's a tool that we should keep in mind. Why am I saying those three? Because the access to information and the education will allow them to have to take a decision, to take a smart decision. Now they have information coming from everywhere on all the networks. This will allow them to decide which candidate is better than the other, what program does this candidate has to offer for my country, what has he done, what is his past, they can review his files, they can understand better the situation, what's happening in Lebanon politically and economically. So that's on the education part and the access to information. Then you have technology. Why I'm saying technology? Because technology today will allow the youth to influence others. It's not about only forming your own opinion, it's about how you spread that opinion and spread your knowledge to other youth, to other people who need to understand what's happening around. So you have to influence other, like if each person could influence 20, 30 other people who would in turn influence 20 other individuals, then this would mean that we've already achieved a lot. And third, I'm talking about the vote, because the vote is when you execute that decisions. So if you and 20 or 30 others go on the day of the voting and you place your vote there, disregarding whatever your parents say and the old generation says, you can make the change. Okay, you're going to tell me, okay, it's baby steps, but baby steps will lead the way. It's not going to be, nothing happens overnight. Change doesn't happen overnight. But today we saw Na'abat al-Muhammin, we saw Na'abat engineers, we saw the elections at the universities. Independence won. This is a way forward. We should build on this momentum. And that's why I'm saying the youth are making the difference. And trust me, today politicians are afraid of the youth. They're afraid to go out today. Why? It's not my parents that are frightening the politicians that they are afraid of. They're afraid to meet these guys on the streets, blocking their way, blocking their kids, blocking them accessing restaurants, high-end restaurants. So trust me, the fear is there. They just have to keep building this momentum and influencing properly. And as I said, sharing knowledge. It's very important to use wisely technology and to keep the momentum. Silence.
Lovely how you shaped it. I just have a question for Dr. Jihad. You told us before, you once said that they have been telling you that you are tomorrow's leaders, you are addressing your youth. Tell them we are the leaders today before tomorrow.
Yes, exactly.
So
for me, youth are they are the living present, and I said that in a Rethinking Lebanon conference back in 2017. So Lebanese youth are the living present. They're not the future. The future are the kids. So you should not wait and postpone until you take over. And I've been calling over and over to have more than 80% of the ministers less than 35 years old. Why? Because youth are ahead of us in terms of technology, in terms of initiatives, in terms of they were able to broaden their horizon. They have more lobbying. They can connect easily with people from different countries. They are pursuing their studies abroad, and they are with people who have influence. So we rely on their lobbying. And if you take, for example, the world around you, so you see that you have prime ministers and ministers that are young, okay, around the globe, especially in, I don't want to name in New Zealand, Scandinavian countries, even the French president, he was under 40 when he took office. So more and more we have youth around the globe, because nowadays even the startups around the globe, in case you take the GAFA group, whenever I talk about GAFA, I'm talking about Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple. So all these companies and the new startups who are employing thousands and hundreds of thousands of new employees, we had youth behind them. So since you are, as Danielle said, that everybody fears youth, so we rely on you, and you should be the president. So they should not tell you, you should wait until your retirement in order to be involved in politics. On the contrary. So you should start building the future of the kids from now. And who's going to build the future? The living present, who are the youth. And you proved more than once that you can embrace a change easily, more than others who resist the change. So that's why you should lead the way. I disagree with something that Danielle said, that she wants you to go and change while voting, maybe in the next parliamentary election. So voting makes sense in case you have a fair play. So voting makes sense in universities, in the order of engineers and architects. Makes sense when you have a fair game. But whenever you're going to do voting in the parliamentary election, voting under occupation from this regime is meaningless, because they're going to put the rules of the game the way they want. So since we are in the Euro Cup season, imagine that you are playing, imagine that you have two teams, the youth or the opposition, and people against this regime and the regime. So in case they want to set the rules, they're going to tell you the following. We as government, there is no box, so you cannot score any goal. Okay, we as a regime, we're going to play with 24 players. You as opposition, you're going to play with 4 players. So even if you have Messi and Ronaldo, you're not going to score any goal, because they don't have any box anyhow in order to score anything. So even if you're going to vote, they're going to steal the election. They're going to cheat. They're going to do everything. So it's useless. And I'm going to take it one step further. In case we take the public sector in Lebanon, in case the size of the public sector in Lebanon, you have more or less around 400,000 people between who are part-timers, full-timers, and retired people. If in case you have 400,000, out of the 400,000, I'm not going to say all of them. I'm going to take half of them. So it means 200,000. Whether they were employed or they got a promotion through nepotism or through this regime. So these people are not going to vote for you. So 200 out of the 400, 200,000. Imagine that every one person, okay, has a wife, father, and a mother. I'm not going to tell you that he has kids. So it means 200 times 3, 600 plus 200, 800,000. So it is end of the game. So to add on that, today, in order to go to the hospital, you don't have enough money anymore. So you're going to ask for their help. So you're going to end up by being in a certain Stockholm syndrome. Okay? So if in case you need the diesel in the winter, they're going to give you as well diesel, they're going to give you medicine, they're going to give you this kind of things. So we're not in a certain fair play game in order to play against them. Let's call it this way. Whenever you're going to have fair election, the way we have it at universities, I'm sure you're going to beat all of them. I'm sure youth will get more than 80% of the votes. In case we are in a certain fair play game. Yes, Daniel.
Yes, yeah, because I've been wanting to say. First of all, I've listened to what you said. You have a point, but you're disregarding, I think, the impact of the expats. Why am I saying so? Of course, we
they
should
don't
have
vote, Danielle.
No,
Danielle,
exactly.
expats, they don't vote.
Okay, let me just get my idea. نحن اليوم we can have an international oversight على the election. It's very important to have international oversight on the upcoming elections because I believe also that there's a lot of awareness. A lot of people that were living in Lebanon didn't vote last time or voted just, I bet so many students, you would ask them now, they would tell you, I voted because my parents told me so. They were fine, they were living in a bubble maintained by a fake peg. Today, everyone realized that it wasn't built on solid ground, that everything collapsed on our heads, and we understood the reality. So here, I have numbers. Today, you have only 47,000 out of 14 million expats, around 14 million expats that actually voted in 2018. That's very, very little. Let's say, مش عم بحكيك, I'm not saying 14 million. Let's say 10% of those 14 million, we can mobilize 10%, just 10%. And let's count this, يعني 1.4. 1.4, let's not consider even the kids. Half of it, 600,000, 700,000. 700,000 can make a difference if we are able to mobilize the expats. Expats are key here. And I believe that the youth are playing a big role in order to help us mobilize the expats, and technology will play a big role because now the expats have seen what happened here. I'm not talking about the 14 million. I really decreased it to 10%. And again, what you said is very true. We should have an international oversight on the election or else it won't work. But I do believe that we shouldn't just tell the youth, okay, it's not going to work, this is it. And how can you change? At the end of the day, we're blocking the roads for them.
No. You change by lobbying from outside and inside. Playing their game, even if you're gonna score an A+, you're gonna get an F. Okay, this is how it goes with the system. And even if they deserve an F, they're going to end up by having an A. And if history is any guide, it's gonna repeat itself in the upcoming election. So I call the youth and those who are independent to boycott the upcoming election because it's useless. Unless you have a fair play, you said international oversight. I want it to be fair international oversight. I want all the factors and elements to be present. The way it is in the election at university, because you knew that at AUB, USG, LAU, independent and secular clubs were able to defeat all parties together. So in case we're going to have the same conditions, of course, we go and we vote. In case we don't have the same conditions, so let the world know that we are the highest party and the biggest, okay? The highest in terms of ambition, but the biggest in terms of number.
We agree at least on international oversight.
Of course, this is the minimum.
Minimum, exactly.
But you need to have it in an impartial way, okay? And let's say to really have an international oversight, not just to have it like part of the show, okay? So they have to be serious. That's why we need lobbying.
Of course.
Okay.
Next.
Okay, all right, amazing. Actually, I'm a living example of how independence won here at AUB. So I think, yes, major changes are upcoming, but as you mentioned, international oversight is a must. Going to the next step, youth and social media. We often see posts, hashtags regarding numerous topics on social media. Danielle, as an influencer on Instagram, would you think that this will play a role in change?
Yeah, of course. When I said the use of technology, I meant social media is playing a big role there. It's raising awareness about everything that's happening around us. Topics that before we used to be afraid to talk about, now we're talking about injustice, about issues regarding human rights. As we've seen what happened in Palestine, everything was public on social media. And that was the first time actually you see so many people rooting in favor of Palestine, of the injustice that was happening there. So yes, social media is playing a major role today, and that's why I said we should focus on raising more and more awareness. And what's important about social media is that it differentiates itself from the media, the traditional media on TV, because most of the traditional media is very politicized. There's always a politician behind it, someone controlling what's being shared on the news. Whereas on social media, you have access to a variety of information, and you are able to make your own, if you want, your own conclusion out of the content that you read. It's very important to just be able to analyze critically whatever you read on social media, to be cautious about what you read, and to always make sure there is a reference, that it's not just talks, to brainwash your brain more. But I believe that the youth are wise enough to know exactly what to take out of social media these days.
Amazing. Yes, I fully agree. I fully agree. Dr. Jihad, what do you think? Without Dr. Jihad.
What do I think? That as I told you, the youth, they are ahead of us in this area. They have their opinion that's going around the globe. So the opinion of Lebanese youth is not limited to Lebanon anymore. So they are influencing actually expatriates, and they have a great influence as well on people from other nationalities, and they can help us. So I'm sure that we've seen that plenty of media outlets, they were hosting Lebanese youth because they want to listen to them nowadays. International outlets, they hosted more than let's say class representative and those who won in the elections, and they want to hear about you, what kind of Lebanon you want in the future. So more and more we see that, and I've seen that Lebanese youth outside Lebanon, they are real ambassadors for Lebanon. So someone might hate a country because of you. So you have a great responsibility how you're going to act and interact with others. So once you are outside the country physically, or while running your page or while posting something, you might maybe others will be intrigued to visit Lebanon and to know more about Lebanon as a tourist, and they might as well align with you in order to help Lebanon and help the youth free us from this cruel regime that is really on a daily basis. Let's say I don't know how to say it, but on a daily basis they're making the whole population suffer in a really very harsh way. So I guess we need more lobbying from the Lebanese youth. In general, Lebanese are not very good at lobbying, unfortunately. This is a cultural issue. But as we've seen in the last revolution, that mainly female and youth, they were leading the way, and these were the untapped potential in our society. They were the women and the youth, and they were leading the way. Why we don't have revolution anymore in Lebanon? Because those who were leading the revolution, they're no longer in Lebanon, the vast majority of them. So we rely on them to be the catalysts outside Lebanon, whether while using social media or while being present in different places. So we rely on them while using Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, let's say Zoom, meeting, anything.
So hopefully our youth will take this message and try to work on it, because as you said, they're the present before the future. Now we saw the dark side of the picture, then we saw the youth. Now what about the good side? What we can do? What are the solutions that we can do from the technical side and all other sides?
Today, should I start?
Yes, of course, always.
Today, what they're doing are short-term solutions, and they're putting band-aids, and they're just wasting time, and it's becoming harder and harder to implement the real solutions. Now we're going to talk about technical solutions. Of course, nothing can be done. Like whatever I'm going to say to you now in terms of technical solutions, you can do nothing if there is no political consensus and international support to be able to do these technical solutions, because the solutions are there. What you have to do basically is today to optimize the resources that you have. So what are the resources available at hand? These are the FX reserves of the central bank. You have to use them in the wisest way possible in order to rebuild your economy. So first of all, you need to form a government. This government's mission will be to rescue the country, to implement the necessary reforms we've been all talking about, and to start negotiations with the IMF as soon as possible. Yesterday, before today. So this is point one. Second point, we have to have a plan to ration subsidies, because today we're wasting more money. We're not channeling these funds properly. There's a waste of funds on the subsidies that are happening today. You cannot remove directly the subsidies. Ideally, we'll reach a point where we should remove them, but we should find a way to support the most vulnerable ones among us today, because or else you will have a social explosion. And it's very important to know that today, as the subsidies are going, there's a study that was done by InfoPro that shows that only the poor are benefiting from only 25% of the top subsidies as they are today. So this is really bad. So the subsidy plan is wrong and has to be done in a proper way. And when they are talking about a ration card, it has really to be given to really the most vulnerable ones among us. That's why also here you need an international oversight to make sure it's going to the right people. You have to support the health sector and the education sector, because these are our assets, and we cannot recover from this crisis without these people that are, unfortunately, most of them are leaving. You have to do a restructuring plan for the banks, because you need healthy banks to grow your economy again. So you have to agree on the losses, distribute the losses in a fair, most possibly fair way, and restructure the banking sector. What do you need to do? You need to also provide help industries in Lebanon, support them as much as possible, those who have a competitive advantage, in order for these companies, these industries to be able to export and to get us the much needed inflows of dollars into the country. You need to have a plan for the electricité du Liban, because without electricity you can have no businesses and no tourism at all. So you need political stability. So that's, you need to also negotiate with the bondholders, the Eurobond holders. So you have to finalize a deal with them in order to get future financing. So basically, that's technically, I'm sure you've heard them all over again, but technically that has to be done. But nothing can be done as long as you don't have political will.
Very nicely targeted. Jihad, what do you think?
Do you want it from the end, or you want short-term, let's say, solutions?
Both.
Okay. So if you want short-term, we should encourage the knowledge economy, because in general, this is the way where you're going to have the least investment and with the highest return. They always say that we should encourage agriculture and the industry. Okay. In general, you need plenty of capital inflows and plenty of investment for agriculture and for the industry, and plenty of know-how. Whereas for the knowledge economy, it's easy. And I've been calling since 2016, and there was a huge campaign in 2017 asking our expatriates to outsource plenty of jobs to our Lebanese youth that can be performed remotely. So in case you want the fastest return with the fastest return and the highest return, highest ROI, return on investment, you're going to have it in the knowledge economy. And this is a way in order to break the barriers, because sometimes some people, it's not easy to get a visa for them. It's not, sometimes they get the job, but they don't give them a visa. So this is how you break the barriers. This is on one hand. On the other hand, you have people that can stay with their kids, with their family, and work from their house in Lebanon, from the village. And second, for me, if you want to be very practical, we see those who were elected at AUB, LAU, USG, and other universities. So we ask them to form the new government. Okay? And I'm with decreasing the age from 25 to 20 to 21 or 23. So why not having ministers at the age of 21 and 23? Why? So, and I even if they're going to choose randomly among you, I'm sure you're gonna do a great job. Those who are able to win the elections, I'm sure you're gonna do a great job at so many levels. Okay, so why not 80% of the next government from you? So you're going to give trust internally to the region, to the international world, and we're going to get funding from expats and from around the globe. And our economy is very small now. The size of our GDP went from being 55 billion in 2018 to 18.7 billion in 2020 as per the IMF. So in case we're going to take it 2021, our GDP is much smaller. So which means we need just a little bit of inflows and everything is going to boom again. All we need is trust. You cannot build the trust again with this political class. It's finished. For me, we need a new banks from abroad. It's finished with these banks. So the trust is gone. Those who are paying nowadays are small depositors. They are paying the price. And what they are undermining, that small depositors and people, they're not going to have trust in the banking system for the upcoming years. And this applies to small depositors and to people around the globe, whether expatriates or people from various nationalities who trusted our system and invested their money in the banking system. It was not investment, but let's say deposited. So the bottom line of everything is trust. Without the trust, it's useless. Of course, I agree with Danielle that we need to negotiate with bondholders. We need the IMF now. Before, it was possible without the IMF. Now, it's no longer possible after the default. Okay, and the terms of the euro bonds, the CAC, they're not, they do not exist, and they're not good. So we need someone to negotiate on our behalf, and it's necessary to have the IMF by our side. But what is more important than any economic plan, and then the IMF, and then everything, who is behind this economic plan? If they're the same people, no trust. So I prefer to have an average or decent economic plan, not the best economic plan, but to have brilliant minds like the Lebanese youth who won the election behind this economic plan. I would prefer to have this instead of having the best economic plan and having behind this best economic plan the corrupt politicians that we have, because it's going to be useless. It's going to be poetry, and bad poetry, but with bad intention. Okay, so that's it. So we need to, of course, it's still have hope, because the economy is very small now. It's just a very small economy. We can start everything again, and it's going to be robust growth with more than double-digit growth per year. In case we're going to have the appropriate people, you're going to get plenty of assistance, plenty of inflows, and the expatriates, if you are there, they trust you. And big, let's say, institutions, they will help you. Governments who love Lebanon and love Lebanese will come and rescue you and assist you. All we need is trust. Trust cannot come but through the independent Lebanese youth.
I always like to joke about one thing. I say that they shouldn't allow people above 50 to vote. That would be a solution. Ban them from voting.
No, it's I don't know if you want to ban certain people to vote, maybe from one time, just to give a chance for the youth. Maybe
Yeah.
those who I know that some of them are decent, maybe half of them are decent, but if you want to ban someone from voting, maybe you should vote for one time at least those who are in the public sector, because some of them they enter the public sector.
Yeah. Jihad, is
شكله
it
not
me or
هيستاهل.
is Jihad? Yeah, probably it's 6, so the electricity cut somewhere.
Yeah. So basic Lebanese issues.
Oh, yeah, everyday's issues. It's
Yes.
good that we still have air conditioning. It's so hot today.
Yeah, it's very warm.
Yeah, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Huh? I don't think that we're gonna escape. No, it's gonna get worse actually. Shortage is gonna get worse and worse if we keep on going the way we are today. Anyway, you've heard yesterday the French ambassador to Lebanon. You heard what she said to our prime minister, right? I don't know if you listened, that he was basically saying that we are under siege from outside, from the US mainly. And she basically replied that what's happening is the result of deliberate inaction and incompetence from our leaders. So basically, it's not an international siege, it's a local internal siege that these politicians are imposing on us. I'm strongly convinced they are incompetent. They are short-sighted and they don't want to move forward. And they are blocking everything because as the solutions are there, really, Mohammed, the solutions are there. And as I said, I've listed them. It's going to be hard at the beginning. And the ones who tells you that we are better off without an IMF program, it's really the opposite. Actually, the people that the ones who would be really worse off if we don't reach an agreement with the IMF is the Lebanese people, because the government will be worse off if we reach a deal with the IMF. And you know why? Because politicians will not have any more access to public finances, public funds, because they will not let them steal anymore. First. Second, the generators mafia will not have a role to play anymore because we'll be fixing EDL. Third, the smugglers will not be able to smuggle anymore because one of the conditions of the IMF is to control the borders. So that's why they don't want an IMF, not because the IMF will impose a haircut. Every day you're taking a haircut. The IMF also comes with a social safety net for the most vulnerable. So the ones that's trying to promote that an IMF program is not good for the country, well, they have an agenda behind it. That's my personal opinion. I don't know what Jihad thinks about this.
I'm thinking it's we have to go to the IMF now after we defaulted, and it was a hard default. It's no longer an option. Before it was an option, now it's no longer, because we are isolated and we need, let's say, someone to trust, so someone to negotiate on our behalf. So having the IMF on our side or on board, it's gonna be different now.
But Doctor,
So it's not about. Yes, go ahead.
sorry, from the political side, do we see that there are major problems that they are setting to stop the IMF from getting in? Is it because they don't want us to know the real numbers, like the reserve in the central bank, or to like cover their corruption? What do you think?
For me, they don't do anything that has meaning. So everything that should be done, they do the opposite. And this is, if you take the last 10 years, this was the case. So economics 101, you cannot raise taxes in the middle of a recession. They raise taxes. We go from recession to depression. They tell them that we tell them stop subsidizing real estate. Okay, they subsidize real estate. Stop subsidizing Lebanese pound and avoid hard lending. They don't listen. We tell them that you make a certain market for the exchange, let it fluctuate between 1,300, 1,700. Told them so when the balance of payment was realizing a surplus in 2009. So we got the chance of making the Lebanese pound fluctuating between 1,300 and 1,700, and we could have it for 1,300 because we got the huge inflows in 2008 and 2009, and after that we would have got 1,700. So they don't do anything. We told them not to default, they default, because by defaulting they made everyone poorer. So giving, you know, the Pareto principle, 20-80. So they give people 20% of things in terms of subsidies. They take 80% away from them. So every time you are depreciating the Lebanese pound, you're making people poorer. So I'm sure that everybody would have agreed on lifting subsidies when the dollar was 2,000, telling them that the dollar, in case we're going to lift subsidies, it would have gone maybe to 4,000, but it would have been after that to 3,000. Because whenever you're going to lift subsidies, first thing for sure, the currency is going to depreciate, but then it's going to appreciate at a later stage. So in case they have lifted subsidies and they wouldn't have defaulted, by now the dollar would have been 3,000. Everybody, I'm sure, would have preferred a dollar with 3,000 with price of gasoline now 50,000, 60,000. It wouldn't have been 60,000, it would have been 50,000 even. Okay, but now why it is expensive? Because we have a dollar of 18,000. Lifting subsidies at 18,000, it is a big problem. But lifting subsidies when the dollar is 2,000, it's not a problem.
Exactly. Too late.
That's it. This is the situation. So they give you 20% in terms of subsidies, and they take more than 80% by depreciating your currency and making your life a real hell. Look what's happening in terms of medicine, going to hospital, queuing for gasoline.
Yeah, but just tell you, today people are asking them, please lift subsidies, let us find medicines. We would pay the price, but just lift it. You know, they're so
they're
desperate
playing
that
it
they're
this way.
Yeah, they are playing it this way. Yeah.
They're playing it in a psychological way. Please let everything be available, even if it's gonna be at high price. So every year they used to accuse external factors for being behind the collapse of the tourism sector. So the real enemies of the tourist sector in Lebanon, this regime, because they aced it in marring our image and sending this picture to the international community. If you come to Lebanon, there is no gasoline. If you come to Lebanon, you have to queue for hours. If you come to Lebanon, there is no medicine. If you're going to get sick in Lebanon, you don't have hospitalization. So who was behind marring the image of Lebanon this year and ruining the success of the tourism sector despite the current circumstances? This is the regime, because the Lebanese youth and let's say the entrepreneurs, they were able, despite the current circumstances, to have a decent start for the tourism sector and the tourism industry this year, despite all the odds, despite all the bad factors. The tourism season in Lebanon this year was to a big extent doing fine. Why I go to certain places nowadays, Batroun, Bremana, other places, not to miss any other region. So sometimes I don't see people there. So I asked the owners, what's happening? Why yesterday it was really full and we didn't have seats to sit, and almost today it's empty? They tell me because there is no gasoline. Imagine.
It's only gonna get worse, Jihad. It's only gonna get worse. I don't know what what's gonna happen, because on one side they say they don't want to use the reserves of the central bank to be able to keep on subsidizing. But what's going to happen if they don't use the reserves? And is it true that he legally can't use the reserves? What's the legal constraints? Are the reserves really present? Do we really have 15 billion? That's the big question mark today. No one knows. Like I'm telling you, okay, we use our resource, the 15 billion, assuming they exist. But do they really exist? How can you explain the fact that whenever we're in need of gasoline, let's say, or fuel, we see that the black market rate goes up a lot, as if someone was just printing lira and buying them on the black market. Or on the other side, when there is the new circular 158, you see that also the rate in the black market jumps like by just a miracle, coinciding with the moment they announce it. So it's like someone is printing also lira or using liras that they have to buy on the black market, thus the rate going up. I don't know. These are all assumptions. No one knows, but there are big question marks here. And I'd love, by the way, Jihad, to have your opinion on that.
I do agree. You're playing the role of Muhammad. You're the moderator now.
You know, actually, I got used to it because I always do it on my page. So sorry, Muhammad, because these are ideas that no one has an answer to. So maybe Jihad has an answer to it. Let's see, because I assume this is my main assumption. My main assumption is wrong, then all the analysis is wrong. So is the main assumption.
No, you're acing in your debate, and I do agree on several points that you highlighted, and they're very important. Thank you for raising this issue. If we have to go to the bylaws, because they always say that according to the law of Na'ad with Tastif, if you've heard, I'm sure you've heard of this alibi. They bring it to the table every time. They ask them what's happening with the obligatory reserves or required reserves. So as per the terms of the Qanun al-Na'ad with Taslif, you don't have any clause that tells you that you should have reserve requirements in dollars. So this means that there is nothing called reserve requirements in dollars. So this was the creation of the central bank governor, I guess. So this is on one hand. On the other hand, now we see that they call it something else instead of calling it احتياطي إلزامي in Arabic. So now they're changing the terms and they call it توظيفات الإلزامية. Okay, so changing the terms. Then why it was actually acceptable to use the 85% of the deposits for funding corruption, and the 15% they say no, these we cannot touch them, as if the remaining 85% there is no harm in using them, there is no harm in wasting them, there is no harm in let's say using them for our own benefit as pets. Okay, so of course I'm concerned like you, Danielle, and I doubt that the 15 billion of reserve requirements are still there in dollars or in any usable currency. And I won't be surprised because 2 years ago we've seen reports from reputable credit rating agencies saying that the usable reserves is not what the central bank is claiming, and it was much less. Once they used to say it was 19 billion, and but at the time the reserve requirements used to be 37, but according to rating agencies they were 19, and then they said they're less and less and less. So in case they were 37, okay, and as per the rating agencies, they used to say the usable reserves were 19. So by now, for sure, we don't have 15 anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know what is left. Maybe 1.5 billion. I don't know.
But there's definitely something missing here, because if there's 15 million left, we wouldn't be talking about a shortage of electricity, about a blackout today. If there's really 15 million, something's not logical at that point.
I don't think, first of all, they're saying that we don't want to touch these because they are reserve requirements and
Depositors'
it's
money.
against the law.
And it's
If it's
depositors' money.
depositors' money, if it's depositors' money, the 85% they were not depositors' money. They were what? Aliens' money.
Exactly. They're funny. They're funny. Like it's impossible.
I don't think they exist. I don't think they exist. The 15 billion. Maybe they exist in local dollars. Maybe they exist in computer entry. But I doubt they do exist in terms of real dollars to be used outside whenever we need. This is my opinion. But you cannot really know unless you have a real forensic audit from an
Exactly.
independent and reputable audit firm specialized in this area.
But they're not letting it in, as we see. They don't want it to happen.
Even less reputable, because even less reputable audit firms in the area of forensic audit, they're not letting them to be here. Okay, so imagine if they're because even the last firm that they decided to have, it's not specialized in forensic audit.
Mm. So actually, like we say in Arabic, فهم كون كفاية. Your understanding is enough.
Yes, of course.
Yes, so يعني they're doing the corruption and they're not letting anyone know the details حتى. So
Yes, to a certain extent, yes, and they have their calls now. They want to use the gold. They're calling for using the gold, and I said that you cannot use the gold if you have still the same people gambling with our present and future. So you cannot ask, for example, your wife to sell her jewelry and her gold because you need the money and you keep on gambling. So she's not gonna give you the money for gambling. So is she going to sell her jewelry and her diamonds? And you know that diamonds are women's best friend. So she might sacrifice her diamonds in order to teach her kids for hospitalization, for something decent. But you don't do it because her husband wants the money in order to gamble. So if in case you're gonna touch gold and you have the same people in place, so it means you are encouraging them to keep on and to gamble with your present and with your future and with everything that we still have. Of course, I'm against touching the gold.
so gold. What do you think, Daniel?
No, I agree with Jihad, with the current political class here. Of course, don't let them touch the gold, of course, because they will be depleting, like they are depleted our reserves, our money. They would definitely be depleting it more. فينا نسرق أكتر. Can we steal more? Yes, okay, we're gonna steal more. No, definitely, this political class shouldn't be able to touch this gold. And here also, I have a question: is the gold? No one really assessed if the gold really exists. Also, here there's a question mark, so I don't know if the gold, as much gold as they say, exists with the central bank. And where is it? Is it in Lebanon or in the US? So also here there's a question mark.
The crisis really questioned everything that they told us. So really now all we have is questions. Now it's really time for some answers.
Exactly, Muhammad. They always used to tell you since the very beginning of the crisis, don't worry, your money is here. Don't worry, your deposits are here. At that time, I used to call people to do a stop loss, although I told them ahead of time before the collapse not to put all their money in Lebanon and how to diversify their portfolio, and I said it publicly. But after the crisis, I told people to go for a stop loss, but Lebanese people, they're not used to a stop loss. So they have in their mind and in their culture that everything they do, it was a bargain and it was a laqta and they got the best deal and everything. Even if in case they bought an apartment, it was always a laqta. It was always the best deal and nobody can have the same deal. Nobody else can have it. But actually, they should start listening to and accepting the loss. I wish they accepted a loss of 10% or 20%. At that time, I was telling them accept a 10% loss. Then I told them accept 20, then 30, then 40. They were trusting the peps, they were trusting bankers, they were trusting politicians, they were trusting the central bank governor and all this regime, telling them that your money is always here. Yeah, it's always here, but at what price? Now it is always there, but at 17% value. That's it. So they always mislead people, and they give you false hope, toxic positivity, and unfortunately people, they don't like the truth. We like to tell them that everything is going to be okay, even if we're going to have the same people on board. And you like to tell them that in 3 years you're going to get all your money back. In case in 3 years I'm going to get all my money back, okay, so let me now buy the let's say 1 million with 170,000, and in 3 years it's going to be 1 million. So it's going to be a great investment. Let's all do it. Of course, it's not the case. We have to accept reality. Losses took place, but unfortunately, it was at the expense of small depositors, at the expense of businesses, startups that used to create jobs, at the expense of people who generated their money out of innovation and real work and sweat.
So basically, the Lebanese lira is depreciating really quick. So today it registered 18,500 for the dollar. Where do you think this will go, Daniel?
Definitely, it's going to get worse. Today, the situation is not looking better. We don't have political consensus. You don't have a proper government. You don't have a vision. Everything is short-sighted. So the situation is not looking good. And with no plan, no vision, the lira will keep on depreciating and losing more value. The equation is very simple. It's supply and demand. Today, the supply is soi-disant what's left as foreign currency reserves, what we have that are being dwindled every day, that are declining every day. And you have few dollars coming from outside, from expats sending to their family the minimum for them to be able to survive. On the demand side, you are not a self-sufficient economy. So you rely heavily on the US dollars, on the hard currency, which means that you need those dollars to survive. So there's a high demand on dollars, plus there's panic in the market. So when there's panic in the market, people rush to get these dollars. So as long as the equation is like this, it's going to only get worse. And the longer we wait, the longer it gets harder to apply the solutions that we have to apply. Of course, again, the solution is to form a government, to have a political consensus, to have an IMF deal, to get liquidity on the short term and implement in parallel the reforms. So here I'm repeating myself again. And of course, this would unlock self-conference money, and some Arab countries will be able to help us if we have international community support. This is the only way we have to become a self-sufficient economy. We have to be able to support the industries in Lebanon. As Dr. Jihad said, the industries in Lebanon, we have to have an economy that is self-sufficient. We have to start creating jobs in Lebanon. And this is how we have to find the competitive industries. It's very important, and not to support everything. Support the competitive industries, support the people who have talent in order to start becoming a self-sufficient economy. And only then, when the economy starts again, when you have some liquidity, you can start seeing the rate stabilize again. What do you think?
What do you think, Doctor?
The dollar, as long as you are subsidizing, the problem that you are depleting what is left. And this is on one hand. And you have to take into consideration that what Danielle said, and I do agree with her, that the problem, you have plenty of demand for US dollars, but you don't have enough supply. You have to bear in mind that we are in the we have plenty of tourists coming to Lebanon, and we are in the tourist season. So normally you're not supposed to have a devaluation further and further, and you're not supposed to have the currency depreciating, because we already have the devaluation in Lebanon, even if it's not announced. So having lots of inflows coming to Lebanon during summer and plenty of tourists from expatriates and from other nationalities, and seeing the currency depreciating at this fast pace, it's going to raise plenty of questions. Okay, so in case we have tourists and plenty of inflows and the currency is depreciating, so once we're done with this season, what would be the case? We'll have less dollars, but it seems the same demand. Okay, so less supply, more demand. And you have to take into consideration that we are subsidizing smugglers, we are subsidizing parties in order to have the, let's say, the goods that are subsidized, because I'm sure that in their inventories they have these goods in order to give it as a form of bribery for people before the next election. So as I said in April 1 to 2020, we don't have a ceiling for the exchange rate. So it's a free fall for everything until we're going to hit the wall. And I don't think we didn't reach the hot bottom, because we didn't lift subsidies fully. And it doesn't mean I'm with subsidies. Okay, I'm not with subsidizing in general, and I don't like subsidies. But lifting subsidies at the price of 18, it's not the same as I said that lifting subsidies at the price of 1,800. When the price was 1,800, I said it in numerous articles, it's time to do capital control on the Lebanese pound more than putting capital control on dollars. Because in October 2019 and November 2019, people used to withdraw hundreds of millions in Lebanese pounds, and they used to take this money and purchase dollars with this huge amount of money, and it was pushing the prices higher and higher. Lately, they started putting capital control on Lebanese pound. So which means after it's too late, they're putting capital control on the Lebanese pound, and they're putting and they are lifting subsidies. So of course, lifting subsidies at these levels, it's going to be, I don't know, maybe hell. It's going to be hell for the citizens. And nowadays, it is the same for the vast majority of Lebanese, whether to go to work or to stay at home. It's the same, because with gasoline prices at these levels, the real demand is going to decrease. Okay, but this market share that used to go to the real economy is going to be taken by the smugglers. So let's say the real economy used to take 40%, and the smugglers say 60%. Now maybe the real economy 20 and 80% for the smugglers and political parties, and for the let's say the traders, and to increase their inventories. Why? To sell it at a higher price later on. Okay, so they're gonna build up more inventories to stack it for a later stage.
All right, so before we wrap up, Daniel, how do you address our youth?
Well, what can I say? I know that everyone's feeling demotivated at the moment, but it's not a time to say to give up. It's not a time to give up and just to cry and to look at the situation pass in front of us. It's the time to act. Now, of course, the youth, some of them, if they have an opportunity to leave, let's face it, let them leave. They can have their countries from abroad. And there is nothing called anymore hijrah. You're 2-3 hours away from your country. You can do a video call. You can see your parents. There's nothing called something hijrah. And the biggest asset of Lebanon has always been its talents, its expats. We have used, and it's our oil. We used to send our talent abroad in order to get some dollars to the country. So these guys, okay, guys, you can go, you can travel, you can be also contagious abroad. As Jihad said, you can lobby from abroad. This is what we want you to do. You need to do your task properly. And those who stay in Lebanon, you can do also your job here. You can work. Aslan Jihad raised a very important thing at the beginning. He said you can work remotely. There's something called virtual immigration. So you can work remotely from your house. So this is also something that you can do today. Don't give up and know your worth. And don't sell at a lower price. Okay, of course, you have to agree to a certain, you have to provide for your family, for yourself, but don't sell yourself low. Don't let the situation force you to do so. Try as much as possible to be within a logical level, and try to keep on being active on the social front, on social media, everywhere. Be contagious, and what can I say? Support each other. It's going to be very difficult. We might go through a more difficult period to come. So we have to put our hands together in order to make change. I don't want to do shi'arat, لأنه shi'arat won't help. The reality is here. It's dark, it's gloomy, but this is when it shapes our personality. Now we've learned from the mistakes of our parents. We've learned that something that is not solid will collapse on our head, like our economy. It was not built on solid grounds. It was not sustainable, and it ended up collapsing. So everything you do, whether on the personal level or on the business level, make sure it is built on solid ground. And what I can tell you is that this past 2 years, you've witnessed the crisis. You did an MBA. It's not something that any human being would be able to figure out. Today, you know that there are several exchange rates. You try to go to the supermarket. Okay, should I pay in cash, in check, at 3,900, at the black market rate? What rate to use? All this have shaped your personality. They usually give you a case study. You've lived live the case study. So this will shape your personality. And I'm sure that later on you will look back and you'll say that this crisis turned you into a different person and allowed you to navigate any crisis in the proper way. So that's it.
Thank you, Daniel. That's really amazing, but hopefully things will turn out positive. Dr. Jihad, you always advocated for youth empowerment. Now, how do you address them?
Now youth are empowering others because I guess they don't need empowerment anymore. They are the strongest circle, as I told you, and now they should tell others what to do. As Daniel said, maybe it was not bad to have a crisis at that moment because it taught you a lot. Okay, and I'm sure that it's going to be an incentive for you for the future. And she said brilliantly that what happened might play to your advantage. But what I want from youth that to study more and invest more in their financial literacy. Okay, so and to know how to rely on having a real passive income, not a passive income built on sand, the way it was in Lebanon, coming from the rentier economy. And I want the youth to be financially independent, because once they're financially independent, so they are really independent. The good side that this crisis took place when you are still young, not only because you can learn a lot from this crisis, but imagine you're facing this crisis at the age of 65, you just retired, so you cannot be employable somewhere else. or very difficult, in a very difficult manner, to be employable somewhere else. And you're getting your retirement in Lebanese pound. So it would have been really, really a difficult time if you were at this age. Facing a crisis at a very young age, it is in your advantage for me. As Daniel said, you got maybe better than MBA, PhD because of this crisis. So you learned about capital control. 2018, I was talking about capital control. Nobody used to know what is capital control. So plenty of, let's say, the jargon, the concepts in economics. Now everybody is talking about economics. Economics and finance used to be undermined in Lebanon. They used to talk more about politics. Now they talk more about economics and finance, and this is good. And for me, this is going to help you later on. Once we're going to have a decent environment for elections, you're going to vote based on new terms. So economics is going to be one of the factors why you're going to choose Muhammad instead of, I'm not going to say Muhammad instead of Danielle, because I would vote for both of you. Okay? So, but why you're going to vote for Muhammad, why not someone else? Because Muhammad knows about economics, knows about finance, he knows how to run the public finances, he knows how to set an economic plan in the country. He knows that at least when economics is not going to be in good shape, everybody is going to be affected. So now people know the value of economics and finance. Before, no. It was like it's a kind of specialization aside. No, in case economics is not, or the economy is not doing fine, everybody will not do fine. So the medical doctors, the architects, the engineers, lawyers, professors, pharmacists, startups, because you're not going to have funding anymore. So I'm going to tell you something in Arabic. It's no longer enough انك تتبعوا شوقكم بايدكم. بدكم تتبعوا شوقكم وشوق غيركم. So you have a huge responsibility as Lebanese youth, and I'm sure انه انتم قدها. Okay? So you're going to have a brilliant path, a brilliant present, and a brilliant future. And I'm gonna say something else in Arabic. بيقولوا إنه وقت الشدة بتعرف معدن، بيقولوا معدن الرجال. أنا بدي أقول لك بتعرف معدن النساء والرجال وقت الشدة. وأنا بعرف إنه معدن الشباب. You're going to show them what you're made of. So I'm proud of Lebanese youth. I'm proud that my efforts in the last 5 to 6 years working on rethinking Lebanon, for reshaping the future of Lebanon and on empowering youth, and whenever I say youth, I'm talking about female and male, are now strong enough, and they proved it in the last 2 years, and they are still proving it. And I'm proud of you, Muhammad, and all the independent Lebanese youth, whether in Lebanon or around the globe, because you are going and very soon to rebrand Lebanon. Okay, now the brand of Lebanon is affected because of what others did. I'm sure you're going to do a rebranding for our country, and we're going to have our place again in this world, and the place or the brand that we deserve. We as Lebanese, we deserve much better ranking for our passport. We deserve much better pay for our efforts, and we deserve much better than we have nowadays. Thank you, Lebanese youth, for being what you are nowadays.
Doctor, thank you so much for your kind words. We are certain that major changes will be taking place, especially when our students and graduates reach leadership positions. Our youth are actually our hope. They will be the ones reshaping Lebanon. It's in their hands, it's their responsibility, as you mentioned. Hopefully, we're not overwhelming them. We just strongly believe in their ability. Now, I would like to thank you both. Thank you, our esteemed panelists, Dr. Jihad and Ms. Daniel, for this fabulous discussion. It was really an honor to have a very informative discussion with you. And until we meet again, hopefully in person next time. Once again, I would like to shout out all our collabs and committee members that played a role in the success of this event. Now it's time to go and change the world, our beloved Lebanon. First, however, remember, whatever you do, wherever you'll be, never forget AUB.
And don't forget Muhammad and Daniel as well.
Alumni AUB, proud alumni.
Thank you so
Daniel,
much.
thank you for this brilliant discussion. Really, I liked your input and I like what you're doing. Due to you, now we have finance and economics for everybody.
I'm so happy that you like the conversation together and that you like my work. Yeah, exactly. We have literacy, as you said, literacy for everyone in a very simple